Before Johnny Marr became one of the most influential guitarists in British music history. Before the Smiths changed an entire generation. Before Coronation Street icon Curly Watts became one of Weatherfield's most unforgettable faces. There was just one borrowed guitar. One teenage friendship. And one story that somehow survived decades of fame. But then everything changes. Because Johnny Marr has now revealed something Corey fans never expected to hear. He says Curly Watts never gave his first guitar back. Welcome back to Coronation Street Update, where television history, soap legends and shocking behind-the-scenes stories collide. And this one feels almost unbelievable. Because this isn't just about a missing guitar. It's about two future icons crossing paths long before either of them understood the lives waiting ahead. The story begins far away from celebrity culture. Far away from stadium concerts. Far away from the cobbles of Weatherfield. Back in Wythenshawe, two young boys were growing up in the same streets, attending the same primary school, and unknowingly standing at the beginning of two completely different cultural journeys. One would become Curly Watts. The other would help redefine British music forever. That alone feels surreal. But what makes this story fascinating is how ordinary it all sounded back then. No fame. No headlines. No mythology. Just teenagers obsessed with creativity. Johnny Marr and Kevin Kennedy even played together in an early band called Paris Valentinos, alongside future Smiths bassist Andy Rourke. And suddenly this story stops feeling like celebrity gossip. It starts feeling like a hidden piece of British cultural history. Because imagine that room for a second. Future television stars. Future music legends. Unknown teenagers carrying second-hand instruments and impossible ambitions. Nobody knew what they would become yet. And that's what makes Marr's latest revelation feel strangely emotional. Speaking during an interview on Apple Music's Origin Stories, Marr explained that he no longer owns his very first guitar. Not because he sold it. Not because it was stolen. But because someone borrowed it. And apparently never returned it. And that's when things take a darker turn. Because Marr suddenly names the culprit directly. Curly Watts himself. Or rather, Kevin Kennedy. The moment lands with this wonderfully dry mixture of nostalgia and disbelief as Marr explains that Kennedy borrowed the guitar years ago and claimed it later became damaged. It's the kind of story that feels impossible to invent. A future rock legend casually blaming a future Corey icon for losing a guitar that today could have been worth a fortune. But what makes the entire exchange so fascinating is the tone underneath it. There's no bitterness. No anger. No resentment. Instead, there's warmth. History. Affection. Almost as if Marr understands the guitar itself no longer matters. What matters is what it represents. A vanished moment in time. A forgotten Manchester world before fame transformed everything. And honestly, that may be why this story is suddenly resonating so strongly with fans. Because underneath the humor lies something unexpectedly human. The idea that before becoming icons, legends, household names, they were just mates borrowing guitars from each other. But that may not be the whole truth. Because the interview quietly reveals something deeper about Manchester itself. Marr speaks passionately about how rapidly the city has changed over the past decade. Yet despite all that transformation, he insists one thing remains constant. Young people still arrive there determined to create culture. To build music. To build art. To build identity. And suddenly this entire lost guitar story becomes symbolic. Not tragic. Not devastating, but strangely beautiful. A reminder that creative history is often messy, accidental, chaotic, and deeply personal. The guitar disappeared. But the music survived. The friendships survived. The stories survived. And perhaps that matters more. Meanwhile, Marr also revealed updates about his next studio album. His first major full-length project since Fever Dreams PTS 1-4 in 2022. And even after decades in the industry, there's something refreshingly old school about his attitude. He still talks excitedly about singles potentially being played on the radio. That detail feels important. Because in an era obsessed with algorithms and streaming numbers, Johnny Marr still sounds emotionally connected to the simple thrill of hearing a song reach people. It's nostalgia without bitterness. And fans are loving it. Meanwhile, Marr's summer schedule is becoming enormous. Huge live performances. A major Manchester homecoming show at Castlefield Bowl. And later this year, the biggest solo headline show of his entire career at Wembley Arena. which makes this timing fascinating. Because just as Marr enters another major chapter professionally, fans are suddenly looking backwards. Back toward Manchester. Back toward youth. Back toward Coronation Street connections nobody expected to revisit. And what happens next could become even more emotional. Because after Marr's comments exploded online, many fans began wondering whether Kevin Kennedy himself might finally respond publicly. Could Curly Watts joke about the missing guitar? Could the pair reunite for a nostalgic moment? Or could this bizarre little story become one of those legendary entertainment anecdotes fans talk about for years? Because honestly, it already feels iconic. A lost guitar. A future rock star. A future soap legend. And decades later, the story still refuses to disappear. That's the magic of British cultural history. Sometimes the smallest stories become the ones people remember forever. But what do you think? Should Kevin Kennedy finally replace the guitar? Did Curly Watts accidentally destroy a future treasure? And are stories like this exactly why fans still love classic Coronation Street history so much? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this nostalgic Coronation Street deep dive, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more hidden stories, classic Corrie history, and dramatic entertainment updates here on Coronation Street Update. Because sometimes, the most unforgettable Coronation Street stories happen far away from Weatherfield.